Hello, everybody. It's good to see all of your faces again. Having a majority of us here, I will officially call this meeting of the City of Boise's Public Works Commission to order, and I will kick things off with a quick calling of the roll. If you are here, please let me know. Commissioner Ellis,
Present.
Commissioner Morgan,
I'm here.
Commissioner Wernz,
Here.
Commissioner Collette,
Here.
Commissioner Crowley, Commissioner Lockett.
Here.
All right, thank you all. The first thing for us to cover today is approval of the minutes at our last regular meeting from July 12th of this year. And with that, I would entertain a motion.
Chair, I make a
Commissioner Morgan.
motion. I make a motion to approve July's meeting minutes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from Commissioner Wernz. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries and the minutes are approved. And that brings us to our regular agenda, the first item being a recycled water program debrief. And with that, I will turn it over to staff.
Chair, thank you very much. We just wanted to give you, excuse me, an update on what we heard from the last session and how it was kind of integrated into the recycled water program. So that's just a real quick hitter, and I'll turn it over to Colin to give you that quick update.
Chair, commission members, nice to see you all. Good afternoon. And let me just make sure we can get the slide pulled up and then we'll get going. There we go. All right, so let's get going. So if we can go to just a quick overview. I know you all received the packet ahead of time, so hopefully this won't come as a surprise, but 4 items that we'll go through this afternoon. The first one is a real quick debrief on the recycled water topic that you all had at our last meeting. Second one is just a overall, just a high level overview of the roles, responsibilities, and logistics of the Public Works Commission. Public Works overview is the third one. We'll just go into a bit more depth about what Public Works does. And then the last one, as you all remember, is just a bit of a reset on the focus for this year. You all will have the input on the topics that we select for the year. And just as a reminder, these 4 topics and tonight is really meant to act as the orientation to Public Works Commission. We know we have some commission members that have been on for a long time, some not very long at all, but we thought made a lot of sense. And in talking with you all, it's just a good baseline to get us all on the same level, provide some overview of what the role of the commission is, what Public Works does, and then really excited for this 4th topic area, which is essentially Public Works Commission saying, hey, here's what we'd like to cover for the year. And we'll have a real good discussion about that. Getting to the first topic item is the recycled water debrief. And after commission met last time, we had a really good discussion as staff afterwards, and just really wanted to make it a priority to bring the input that you all provide back to staff at the end of the meeting. So part of the feedback that we heard as we were kind of resetting Public Works Commission was we're jumping from topic to topic and there's not a lot of continuity between meetings. And so one of the things that was important to us is being able to capture what you told us in the last meeting and then bring that back to commission and say, here's how what the input that you have helped shape our ongoing planning and prioritization work. So up on the slide, what you see there is essentially based on what you told us, the meeting that we had last time. Here's the ways in which your feedback provided helpful information to staff that went into some of our planning work. So it helped improve engagement and policy material accessibility, connected to those community values that the team is working on. As you all recall, you spent a lot of time on the highest and best use prioritization factors, so really helpful input there. Good neighbor impact considerations. From your feedback, we also collected additions to the pilot tour invite list, and then we also captured insights on the future PWC topics of interest. So we'll make this a recurring theme where what we capture out of each meeting, what you all tell us, we'll bring back around around at every meeting and just say, here's the input that we got, and here's how that's impacted our planning work going forward. So is this helpful? Just kind of providing a bit of a recap from last meeting. Okay, a quick over.
Just making sure we're following Robert's rules. This is the next item on the agenda. So we should probably have the chair work the agenda that way.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. Well, are there any questions, comments, concerns, or threats from the commission on the first item on our agenda from the debrief? Hearing none, let's move to the next item on our agenda, the Public Works Commission role, responsibilities, and logistics. Back to you.
Thank you, Chair, Commission members. So the other piece of feedback that we received from you all, one of the other pieces of feedback was to send us packets ahead of time with lots more information and less talking at us during the meeting. And so in the spirit of that, we sent the packets ahead of time with a lot of information on boards and commissions. And so just as a heads up, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these slides because hopefully a lot of the information was in that packet. And rather than just talk at you here today, just a quick overview, and then we'll pause for any questions. But you'll see that theme throughout today, really relying on the homework, if you will, ahead of the meeting. And then we'll just do a brief overview. So this is a pretty dense slide, but essentially you will recognize some of these from your packet, but what commissions do is outlined in boards, commissions, and committees and Boise City Code. It's also available online, but essentially represent the public and the public's best interest. And we thought equally important as a reminder what commissions do not do. And this goes for any commission, not just Public Works Commission, is make citywide policy, resource, fiscal decisions, enact ordinance, force of law. Most boards, commissions, and committees are limited on making recommendations to Office of the Mayor and the City Council. And so that includes Public Works Commission. So just a few, and this is a recap on where we landed. The staff brought back to you all kind of where we see Public Works Commission going and where you all thought that Public Works Commission should go as well. And so this is reflective of that discussion, but providing recommendations on our long-term policies and directions. So those big strategic pieces going forward rather than the day-to-day kind of, I think one of the terms that brought up was like, we don't want to check the homework every day. It's more, how do we help shape long-term strategic policy and the big strategic items that we're working on. Provides guidance and feedback across the entire breadth of duties, and I'll get into some of those. There's a lot within Public Works, and certainly can provide recommendations to the mayor and city council. As you all will probably remember, Public Works Commission had a critical role in the water renewal utility plan, bringing that forward to city council, and was a really nice kind of passing of the baton from the commission to city council. And then as it is listed in code, Public Works Commission is obligated to hear connection fee appeals from the community. Just as a reminder, terms are 4 years. Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Lockett.
Mr. Chair and Mr. Hickman, a question, if I may, please. Can you remind us how often we do have appeals from folks? I think you've told us, but I haven't seen any in the year that I've been here. And so I was wondering how often those happen generally, please. Thank you.
Chair, Commissioner, we haven't had an appeal for as long as I've been at the city.
Oh.
So it's been a while. And part of that is because over the years, we've kind of figured out all of this. When the utilities first started, the connection fee appeals were kind of happening more frequently. But as soon as we started getting some of those policies more consistent and set, then we had less appeals, and we haven't had a connection fee appeal for, I don't even remember when the last one was. It's been a while.
Then just a quick reminder that terms for commissioners are 4 years and 1 year for the student seat. And commissioners are able to serve unlimited number of terms, and elections are held annually, and that will be next month for chair and vice chair roles. Quick note on communication. You all probably know and have seen Kathy Schoenfeld's name a lot in your email inboxes. And the whole purpose of this slide is to ensure that, our communication runs through Kathy, just to ensure that we have the protocols in place, that there's clear, consistent communication, and that you all as a commission have a point of contact at the city. Also recommend copying Steve as the director, but Kathy's really the main point of contact. And just ask that there's no communication with staff kind of on the side, that all communication runs through Kathy both ways, and she can help facilitate any additional communication that needs to happen. And then any subcommittee recommendations through the same channel. Okay, as a result of some of the work that commission and staff put in on kind of the reset and reboot of the calendar, we're typically scheduled right now for our quarterly cadence would be February, May, August, and October and November. And there's the October, November, kind of back-to-back one, because we wanted to provide that orientation, and we'll do that every year based on the topic selection that you all make tonight. Then we'll roll right into November and do our first deep dive, our first quarterly deep dive. So there is kind of that weird back-to-back October, November, but then get into the quarterly cadence. Meetings are typically held here at City Hall. There could be alternate locations, as you all met out at the watershed, but typically held here. They are in hybrid format to allow for folks to join online via Zoom, but we would encourage commission members to attend in person if possible. I think it makes for a better meeting, a better discussion and dialogue, and would support where we're going on more of the discussion here happening in the room. Commissioners are expected to attend all meetings. Meeting notices are sent via email. And just a reminder, Kathy would appreciate me reminding folks to, if you can respond RSV to emails, it just helps ensuring that we have quorum, that we're able to plan for attendance. And then you'll see on the bottom of this slide, just the upcoming meeting dates that we have for the rest of 23 and then on into 24. And just a note that those may shift, but at least wanted to give commission a heads up on some potential dates you could circle on your calendar. Parking logistics. So I'll go over this briefly, and then if you have any questions, certainly we can offline this, and Kathy can certainly help with that as well. But your permits must be displayed in the window. You are able to park in overflow parking in City Hall basement, and has to be for official business during normal meetings. And then again, if you have any questions about parking, we can certainly answer those after the meeting. Okay, and so getting into the flavor of the new Public Works Commission, we just wanted to pause and enough of me talking at you, and hopefully just go around. I'll turn it over to the chair here in a sec, but what we're really interested at this juncture about hearing about is what made you interested in being a commissioner, and then anything that you need that wasn't in the packet or that I presented on here this evening that you think would be helpful about your role. So, Chair.
Awesome. Thank you. Commissioners, it looks like it's time for a little bit of discussion, a little Q&A with you all. There are some questions up on the screen, but I would open the discussion for the first question. What made you interested in being a Public Works Commissioner?
Chair, I can kick off.
Commissioner Morgan.
I have a deeply vested interest in climate change and working for solutions towards climate change. And so when I saw a position open, I was so excited to be able to be a part of a department and part of the city that's working towards solutions and making a more sustainable future for many generations to come. And so I thought that was bold, especially in Idaho, given just many things. So it was really exciting to be invited and then accepted to serve on this commission and be able to be a part of those solutions. So that was my initial reason into coming onto the commission.
Awesome. Thank you. Commissioner Collette.
Yeah, I'll go next. So I think two reasons for me. Primarily, everyone knows I'm an immigrant. I came from South Africa, and I've spoken about this before. Boise really, I felt very embraced by Boise as a community, and I really felt that I wanted to give something back as well, and be as involved in the community as I could possibly, given all the other constraints that I have. And then I think just my professional background in design and construction and development is along the same vein of public works, and I feel like I can potentially ask some good questions and give some interesting feedback. So that was my reasoning for wanting to be involved in the commission.
Thank you. Anyone want to take it next? Commissioner Lockett?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first became engaged in city and city government through my neighborhood association. I've done that for several years, and it was really fun to be boots on the ground, representing kind of the folks in Northwest Boise. This is through the city sanctioned, this is not an HOA, but the city sanctioned neighborhood associations did a lot of work there. Appreciate the process and the institution of city and city government and government in general. And so just was looking to step up and do a little bit more than I could do in my neighborhood association and have some great budget experience that Steve and I visited about that. Was excited to bring that to the table. But just as my kids get older and as I get older, right, as they get older, I also get older. It's just how it works. But as Boise grows and changes, I wanted to be a part of that process rather than just, to your point, Commissioner Kosick, sit on the side and watch things happen. I wanted to be a part of that process and be engaged. So just a great opportunity for engagement at supposedly the best department in the city as we continue to hear. And you do real things, right? You do real things for the citizens. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity, but that's how it all started for me.
Awesome. Thank you. Commissioner Wertz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In addition to some of the same reasons that my colleagues here have given, I think part of it was, Public Works I have a regulatory background, but Public Works has it's kind of invisible or has been invisible. And I think that's changing of necessity. I think the fact that addressing climate change is a major significant part of the city's effort under the Public Works leadership or framework. But I also think when you look at what the city of Boise has in their Public Works department, it's very diverse and it's very eclectic mix of things in a way that's very interesting and very important work. And I guess that was very attractive to me to try to participate in that. I also think that Public Works departments, or at least this one, are kind of on the cusp of making some really significant changes in the leadership in communities. Just the infrastructure is so important.
Thank you. Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you, Chair Cravat. So I'm 52, and ever since I was in grade school, environment and environmental issues have always been really important to me. So I didn't know then what to call it, but I've been an advocate for sustainability since I was little. So I had the opportunity to be a Curbit Pro and a livability ambassador for Boise. And so I was always an advocate for Boise sustainability. And I realized that I didn't really have a good handle on the water renewal program. So when I went through that route, I decided that at the same time I'd seen there was an opening on the Public Works Commission. And so I jumped at it because I really, really, really like learning more about what Public Works is doing. I think there's so much to learn. And I guess that was, that's what I was guilty of, is I wanted to know more. So I hope that I can give back, but I really wanted to learn more. So.
Thank you. And thank you all. We're very happy to have you all here and involved. I guess where it all started with me was growing up in Boy Scouts and just having been instilled with the sickness of leaving things a little bit better than you found them. And then growing up a queer kid whose best friends were all refugees, really wanted to make the best place that I could for people. And so that sickness got directed toward public service. And so the more I learned about people and the way that I could help them, the more I got sort of driven toward the way that we build a city, the way that we run a city. It can really, really make or break what the experience is like for people. And so it's really driven for better and for worse, my sickness here to make this the best department that it can be. And wow, it was a very gentle nudge to make it even better than it already was. So I guess I'll turn it to the second question now, and I'll open this up for anyone who has input here. What additional information about your role would be beneficial? Commissioner Wertz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that in reading through the materials and the memo that you put together, this is really useful because I think there wasn't really, I did a little bit of looking around and I already kind of knew some of the programs the city had, but unless it was somewhere in a file, it looks like new information and it's all in that memo and then more detail in the presentation. Super useful. So I just want to say thanks for that. I don't know that I need additional information, but new commissioners who are coming on subsequently, I think are going to be really benefited by the effort the cities or the departments made to put this stuff together. Thank you.
Chair Gravatt?
Yes, Commissioner Colette.
I think I would almost turn the question around. I think sometimes it feels like, I come to the meetings and I try to participate, but is there anything more that we can be doing to actually, we say we want to give back, but are we actually giving back? Are we being helpful? Is there anything we could be doing differently or do more or?
Chair, Commissioner, I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to set this up to have much more interaction. So the last session was really helpful for us. I know we had a bulleted list of the feedback, but we immediately went to, okay, yeah, we got to add them to the list of tours, right? I think there were like 3 or 4 entities that I don't know why we missed them, but we did. So you guys recognize that. The feedback on the highest and best use policy and making sure that we weren't completely missing the mark, because we're going to have to talk about these things to the community. And these are really important questions that we're asking. So I think the reset that we have with the commission is going to help us get where we want to go. Answering your question directly, I think we'll see how that plays out. I think the one thing we would ask, and I don't know that this is happening, but I'd certainly encourage you, when you're hearing what we're sharing here, to share it with the community, because you're interacting, neighborhood associations, you're interacting with citizens in ways that we don't. And getting that information out where we can give you a heads up that something's coming, or did you know that recycled water, you might hear an urban myth out there about something that we don't actually do, but for whatever reason it's it's out there. So I think going back and talking to the community would be a big help.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chair and
Yes.
Commissioners, if I could add, appreciate that question. And just as Steve mentioned already from the previous meeting, staff genuinely found a lot of value in the feedback received. And I think there's a real sense of enthusiasm about, picking a topic or topics and going forward with that. And I think the other piece that has been really helpful that I'm excited to continue with is the prompts that we send to you all ahead of time, the questions, because from staff perspective, those are the things that we're really wrestling with. And if we can crystallize those, send those out ahead of time as representatives of the community with diverse experiences, and then you all bring that back and we have a real dialogue about that is really good feedback input that helps us shape our work. So absolutely, I feel like, as Steve mentioned, where we're going feels really good to staff members that I've spoken with, that we've spoken with, about helping to shape the work and where we're headed.
Awesome. And I'm in a similar mindset to Commissioner Colette and Director Burgos and Colin over there. And the question that I would direct the question toward my fellow commissioners. And I think that we have a good start on getting additional information from each other to know where we have gaps as public servants on the commission and where we might have opportunities to do some more outreach within our networks to fill those gaps and get more information and input from the folks that we serve. So I think that the social 30 minutes that we have before this and other opportunities that we have to connect with each other are really good starts. So more of that, I believe, will help us round out our networks. So that's the continued information that I would seek from my fellow commissioners. Anything else from the commission on that additional information that you would like? Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. It occurred to me when, Steve, when you said about us being spokespersons for the community about public works. I think about that a lot when people are like, well, public works, what do you mean? What do they do? So it's always good where I'm always thinking of talking points So it's really nice to have some of the slides that you send out because those are kind of like cheat sheets for talking points so that I can quickly answer questions. And by the way, it has happened more than once where, rumors or old stories of materials management, from the past. I love dispelling those rumors. That's one of my favorite pastimes.
And Chair, I would maybe, to your point, Commissioner Ellis, we're also going to rely on you. You're talking to the community, right? I don't want it to paint a picture of like you're our cheerleaders. You're interacting with the community. And if you're hearing things that are frustrating for the community or like, hey, just a heads up, I've been hearing this from my neighbors and there's a lot of confusion. And we've had that before. We've had commissioners say, I can remember Commissioner Quick at one point bringing up on the orange energy bag saying like, there is a ton of confusion right now. And you got to provide some kind of clarity around. And that led to some of the collateral material that we sent out to citizens, really trying to simplify what goes where. So that's a two-way street. So when you're hearing things from the neighborhood association or your friends about confusion over these topics, or you're like, hey, I'm consistently hearing frustration around this, please bring that back to us. That's a good way for us to tap into the community and where there's some concerns.
I'll summarize my notes for you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Moritz.
I wonder, related to this conversation or the conversation and interaction, if we might consider having an agenda item that's kind of towards the end of meetings, perhaps, that just allows for open kind of interaction, feedback, which might essentially lead to a future item for an agenda item, or maybe that's just small, kind of just making sure that we're not missing those opportunities. This might be a little self-serving because I actually have one, but we don't have a place on the agenda, but it's in the vein of putting, there's not a place on our agenda to just do that if it isn't with the specifics of the agenda. So it's a suggestion.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. I usually try to open up at the very end before adjournment if there's any other business or items to bring before the commission, but I believe that it would be an easy addition to have a regular standing item on the agenda as just a reminder of that, and a public face that's an opportunity to provide input. Anything else from the commission? All right, if not, I will turn it back to staff. Are we still on the item 2 of the agenda, or are we moving? All right, then we will move to the third item on the agenda, which is the Public Works overview, and I will turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chair. And this is one of those moments where we do have to apologize for talking at you, but we are going to try to just get through some of the, what is it that we do in Public Works? We have some new commissioners, and I don't know that we've ever actually sadly sat down and told you what we do. We're just so in the moment of doing. So this is an opportunity just to give you a high level overview of just it's not everything, but it's the big stuff that we're in charge of. And please interrupt us with questions. Don't want to, for the next half hour, just be speaking at you, but that's the intent of the next section.
Yeah, Chair, Commission members, just also thank you for the previous dialogue. I think one of the benefits about our reset is that we're able to refine this as we go. And to Commissioner Wertz's point, if there's pieces that we need to tweak, that we need to add on to, we are all ears to that, because we're really looking forward to making this an optimal commission meeting and super valuable for you all as commissioners and for staff. And as Steve mentioned, this will be extraordinarily high level because there is a lot to present. And so I will do my best to walk the tightrope of providing some detail, but not getting into the weeds on everything. And as Steve mentioned, please don't hesitate to jump in with any questions. So the mission of Public Works is to use our resources effectively and to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the community, leaving a legacy of enhanced quality of life for Boise. And a beautiful shot of the Lander Street Water Renewal Facility, which we've used many times because it's a beautiful shot. There's a lot on this slide, and that's intentional. On the left side, you'll see just since 2014, some of the pieces of work, bodies of work that Public Works has added to its portfolio. So I won't read through all of that, but the intention is just really to showcase that I forget which commissioner was mentioning that it's complex and it's a large department and there's a lot going on and is evolving as well a lot. And if you look on the right side of the screen as well, just the takeaway here is that all the sectors that we're involved in are in some stage of flux currently, and it makes for an exciting time to be a part of Public Works, also a challenging time to be a part of Public Works. And I think it also reinforces the need and the importance of Public Works Commission that you all can help provide critical insight, community feedback on a lot of these pieces. But similarly, on the issues side, they're dynamic. And again, I won't read through all of these, but I think that the snapshot here is that there's a lot going on, lots of added to our work, and the stuff that the department wrestles with is really complex and changing. At a glance, Public Works has over 300 employees. I had to rely on Kathy to remind me how many locations we have staff working out of, so 8 locations. And then down below, again, a lot of information, not meant for you to look through every one of those, but just to kind of give you a glimpse of all the different types of work functions that we have. You'll notice on there some like human resources. We don't have an internal human resources department, but it is a function that we participate in. Same with legal. But just to give you a sense for all of the types of work that we're engaged in on a day-to-day basis, the Public Works Department is busy. It's also a complex organization. Again, a lot of information on this slide, but what I wanted to point out here is you really have some internal functions on the left-hand side there. You'll see that there's some that take finance that primarily just function for the department, help in the financial planning. You have asset management that just manages assets within the department. And then on the external side, you have take water renewal services providing, water renewal services. You have trash recycling, compost, who are customers are really the residents, the businesses of Boise. So you have some external services that are focused on the community, the customers, but then all the ones toward the bottom in bold are a little bit of both. So take, for instance, our engineering division provides engineering support and services for the entire department at our water renewal facilities, but also provides support for kind of external customers, if you will. Parks and Rec utilizes the other city departments. And so if you go down that list, it's quite a cross section of internal, but also external customers. And then you have a bit of those that are hybrid. So again, not to go through each one of these, but just to kind of showcase that the work is rather robust and complex. Everyone loves a good org chart. So just wanted to put this up here, and we won't go through this in detail, but I'll take you quickly across the top line here. So there are 6 divisions currently: environmental operations that handles the water renewal services operations, climate action, facility operations, which handles a lot of the maintenance planning for our city facilities like City Hall, fire stations. Then you have engineering that I just mentioned briefly, providing engineering support and services, both internally and to other city departments. And then finance and admin, and under that, communications. So now I'll just go through each of the utilities for more or less. I'll call them that Public Works operates. And again, there is so much more work that goes on in all of those functions that I provided, but we just wanted to give you a high level sense of some of the bigger ones and the ones that we term as utilities with external customers. So when we talk about the water renewal system, it is the city's single largest asset, if you think about that. And I'll pull your attention down to the very last bullet, which if you totaled up all all the assets, all the facilities, all the pipes underground. It's about $3 billion to replace all of that. So a massive investment in the community, a massive asset. Just thinking about the infrastructure, as Commissioner Wernz discussed a little bit, there's the infrastructure that you see and then the infrastructure that you don't see. So we have 5 major facilities that you're able to see, but then also underground 1,000 miles of collection pipe and 29 lift stations. So significant infrastructure throughout the community. I believe that many of you have been out to either Lander Street or West Boise, which are our 2 primary water renewal facilities. You can see when they were built, reaching the end of their useful life. Lander Street obviously is undergoing significant reinvestment currently as we speak. We have a phosphorus removal facility out near Parma. We have a 20-mile south farm is what it's called, that I believe some of you have done tours of as well. And then we also have a large team called utilities maintenance that are in charge of the important task of ensuring that our collection system is clean, functioning properly, making repairs to the system, including geothermal. So a large, complex water renewal system. Yeah.
I believe Commissioner Ellis, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. I'm trying to remember the bullet estimated 3 billion. Was that the same number that we used when it was at 2018, when I was a part of the Water Advisory Board? I thought the number was less than 3 billion. I assume it gets gone up, but what was the number before? Do you?
Chair, Commissioner, the number before we had developed, that was back in like 2014, was about 2 billion. But then when we start running the numbers on the expanded system, as well as what's coming in the future, it's going to be, yeah, pretty significant. And part of this, you know, we'll be sharing with you in the coming months. I mean, our construction costs right now are, I mean, it's really challenging right now. So we'll come back to you with some updates, but yeah, that number is probably from 2021 or 22, the 3 billion.
We've used this slide in the past, but I think it's really helpful, especially as new commissioners are coming on board. It's sometimes it's hard to grasp how much water we treat. And so I think this is a helpful graphic. So 10 billion number of gallons the city moves through its system, renews, and puts back in the Boise River every single year. It's pretty incredible. And if you think about the height of water used every day when covering a football field, 64 feet, it's pretty amazing. That's every single day. And by 2040, we expect that to increase to over 12 billion gallons per year. So a lot of water. This is just gives you a good sense of the infrastructure and the buried infrastructure that we don't often see. On the left there, you'll see a collection pipe that was in need of serious repair. And on the right just shows you what the work that the department does kind of out of sight to ensure that our system remains functional and optimal so that we can provide services to residents and businesses.
Colin, if I can just jump in.
Yeah.
The infrastructure reinvestment piece that's coming is probably the biggest part of our next 20 years. The Lander Street facility, for example, was built in the late 40s, early 50s. That's 70 plus years old. And so over time, we just wrapped up phase 1 of the replacement. We'll start kicking off phase 2 here in the next month. And then phase 3 after that. It's basically a complete replacement of that facility over the next 20 years. Those are costs that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago. So that's where you, like us needing to take out, putting the bond election or the bond vote to raise the money to fund some of these improvements while trying to control affordability was a big part of that. And this is the story nationally, right? That's why we have this big infrastructure bill. We have infrastructure that is just aging out, that's been put in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that we need to be on top of. And this is just a good example of the types of things that we see that we need to be on top of before it fails.
And real quickly, just on where we're going with water renewal, I think some of you have been more in the work of the water renewal utility plan, which essentially set up the future where we're heading. So as one of the topics that we'll discuss later today, using recycled water, enhancing the Boise River was one the community felt very strongly that the utility ought to be doing. As Steve just mentioned, reinvesting in our existing infrastructure, and then as you'll notice, another topic that we'll bring up later this evening is balancing affordability for our community. This just gives you, it's kind of like a different look, different map than the one that you saw earlier. But this one also includes the recycled water elements that are currently underway that we're hoping the commission will help kind of shape a lot of these topics and areas. And then you'll also notice the potential for a fourth facility. All locations are yet to be determined, but just to kind of illustrate how the system is planning on growing, along with a call out there for enhancing the Boise River. Next, we'll go to materials management. Oh, yeah, Steve, go ahead. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Should I pause, Chair? Any questions?
Sure, let's check in. Any questions from the commission up to this point? All right, seeing none, back to you.
Materials management, otherwise known as CURBIT, is the trash recycling, compost, and reduce and reuse program within the city. You do not need to read all of the text on that slide, but this is a neat slide. I think as you read down just some of the major updates that have happened in this program throughout the years. So all the way back in 2009, switching over to single stream recycling rather than having to sort out all the different items like cardboard goes here, paper, you were able to mix those together. And I think it's interesting if you look over at look over two, I guess, columns, and you'll see the before change and after change. So in 2005, 72% participation in that recycling, now up to 98% recycling that we still maintain today. In 2002 and 2012, we had some changes to the glass recycling program. Now it's a really neat partnership with a local company that we're recycling a significant amount of glass every day, every month. Obviously, composting, you all are probably very familiar with the rollout of the new carts with the green lid. And I think, making a significant contribution to our community and keeping a lot of material out of the landfill. I have a slide here in a bit that just shows, I think typifies that. But compost has a 96% participation rate in the city of Boise. Orange energy bags, Public Works is dealing with a real challenge of hard to recycle plastics. So this was a solution that has served our community and kept a lot of material, as you can see over on the right, out of the landfill. And then I think really where this program is evolving is adding the reduce and reuse program to the portfolio of this team. And again, helping the community in different ways move away from single use towards reusable and repairable items. And this is just a graphic. On the left there, you'll see the waste management hierarchy, which is used by EPA, others to kind of, you'll see up at the top is the most preferred. So reducing waste at the source, reusing all the way down to treatment and disposal. And on the right, what you'll see is just where our programs line up with that. And so obviously in the middle there, recycling, compost, HHW stands for household hazardous waste. That's for taking lithium batteries, a lot of the hazardous materials we have sites across the city that you're able to take those now with the addition of the energy bags, but really trying to offer a host of programs at all different levels of that hierarchy. And again, you can see the importance and where that team in this program is going around reduce and reuse, really trying to address the top of that inverted pyramid there. This, I think, is a really important slide, and talking with the CURBIT team, just wanted to make sure that the important takeaway here, I think if you look at the dotted lines there in yellow, that's Boise's population. And really the takeaway is if you look at, you'll see compost addition in 2017. So that green bar going across to your right. But then if you look at trash and then look at the population increase, you would expect typically for trash to increase with population growth. But I think this is a real testament to the Curb It program, to our residents, businesses participating, not only compost, but recycling and glass as well. So just kind of showing the impacts that the programs have in a year-to-year basis. Near term for the Curb It program, working with our partners at Republic Services, they have added 5 all-electric trash vehicles to their fleet, and 5 more are on the way. And if you have seen them or not heard them, they're pretty incredible. They're incredibly quiet, really neat vehicles. So excited to welcome more to the fleet of Republic Services. Also exploring a commercial organics collection program with businesses here in Boise, providing waste evaluations for businesses. So if businesses came to the Curb It team and were looking for insight, advice, strategies on how they could reduce waste at their businesses, providing that service. As Commissioner Ellis mentioned, bringing back Curb It Pros as a way for our community to participate in these programs and be advocates and educators out in the community. We saw a lot of benefit with the first year of that program. And then, as I mentioned previously, the addition of the Reduce and Reuse program. Let me stop on Curb It. Yes.
Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Kavat. I was curious when you said the electric trash trucks, so the ones that are electric is only trash that they're picking up. It's not that they're picking up the recycling or the glass. It's just the trash trucks that are electric.
Chair, Commission member, I might turn it over to my colleague if Peter McCullough runs the Curb It program, and so he might be able to answer that.
That is really interesting. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the city's geothermal utility. This is the City of Boise and Public Works operates the largest of 4 geothermal systems in Boise. The city's system is the nation's largest heating district. It serves about 95 buildings in Boise, primarily in the downtown core, but also including a connection to Boise State, where we serve 11 buildings there, over 6 million square feet heated. We have 3 production wells, I believe. Water comes out at about 177 degrees. It's a closed loop system, meaning that no water is wasted, and it's an incredibly low environmental footprint. So it's really unique to Boise. We're really proud of the system, and there's significant opportunities for growth that the team is exploring as well. One other thing I wanted to mention, the geothermal system is primarily used for office heating, but there are some other unique uses, including sidewalk melt, including laundry, used for heating laundry. And that team is also exploring additional uses that geothermal heat could be used for as well.
Commissioner Moritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm curious, you had that nice big number, 3 billion on the water renewal. And I would maybe think about the geothermal system. Is there any idea of how much that infrastructure is worth? Because it's similar in some ways underground.
Chair, Commissioner Warrens, thanks for the question. We actually put in for, in the past, we put in for grants for system replacement, and we estimated it around somewhere between 20 and 30 million. When you consider every one of those lines, there's a sewer line probably paralleling it. The water renewal system is exponentially larger. And we don't have any treatment plants associated with a geothermal system. So there's some really big capital expenditures that aren't associated with geothermal. So much less replacement value. And we're hopeful to get grants in the future to help us fund some of that.
Chair Gravatt? Sorry, I also have just one last
Yes,
question.
Commissioner Collette.
So if the city runs the largest of four, who runs the other geothermal systems?
Chair, Commissioner Collette. We have the Warm Springs Water District, Heating District, that's the residential system in the green on the slide. We have the federal VA has their own system. The VA campus has a geothermal system. And then the state, that's the blue, sorry, the darker blue up top there. And then the state capital is the only state capital heated by geothermal, and that's owned by the state of Idaho. So that's the light blue that you see around the Capitol complex. And we have some interties with those systems. We're working to expand those, but those are the four separate systems, and of course our system.
Got it. Thank you.
Just a quick graph to show the system growth. What you're seeing there is the number of geothermal customers, and that blue tail toward the end there is projections leading into 2026. So you can see that this system continues to grow, and it's really a unique feature and a sustainable attribute to the city of Boise that we get a lot of interest both locally, regionally, and nationally. Just to look at some of the geothermal pipes, you can see the supply and collection system pipes to the right there. And while it makes for a neat photo on the right, far right, that is not typically what we want to see. So just to give you a sense of what geothermal looks when we have a break, which that team does a great job of trying to stay ahead of a lot of that. But it is similar to our water renewal facilities. A lot of that is aging infrastructure, pipes that have been put in many, many years ago.
Colin, I'll just jump in real quick on that upper picture. We try to stay ahead of that through things like, I think John and the team does it on an annual basis. We'll actually fly over the city with an infrared camera, and maybe we'll pull up a picture at some point for you. But you can see in the streets the lines, and you can see a line that maybe has a little bit of a kind of a wider spot. That tends to be an area where we see a leak starting. And so if we see a number of those in certain areas of town, we might proactively go in and replace that pipe before we see that picture up on the right.
And I would offer up to the commission as well, on the second floor of City Hall now, we have a display of some pipes, historical pipes, if you're interested. It was out at the watershed, but it's located here. So after commission meeting, if you're interested, we'd be happy to run you down and show you some history of the evolution of geothermal pipes.
Commissioner Wertz?
I'm curious, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm curious about what the pipes are made of. The geothermal system is so old. Is there a lot of lead pipe in that, or is it tile?
Chair, Commissioner Warren, so I'll have to get the actual materials, but none of it's lead pipe. Some of it back in the day for the Warm Springs district was actually wood that was wound with wire. And we have that pipe downstairs, but it's evolving now to almost all plastic pipe. And that's been one of the steeper learning curves. The system is it's heat, right? So you have expansion and contraction. If you shut down a certain portion of it, the joints are very difficult to engineer. And there's not a whole lot of other systems that we can go to and say, hey, how did you fix this? Like, there's not that many to talk to. In fact, we're probably the one that most people turn to say, hey, we just started a system. What did you do about this joint? Or did you accept this kind of material for your piping? So.
And on the geothermal system, I'm sure a lot more complicated than I'm remembering it off the top of my head, but the geothermal fund provides 1/2 of 1 FTE to help oversee the system, and then additional support from engineering. Is that correct?
Chair, we actually have, John is a dedicated FTE. I think he's like at 0.75 maybe. I have to go back and check, but we just added a geothermal coordinator. And we're really excited. She just joined about 2 to 3 months ago, and she's going to do great work. So we're excited about her going out and helping John with the marketing of the system, educating people. There's a lot of misperceptions about geothermal. We'll have large developers that come in from out of town that are maybe building something downtown. And a lot of times we'll approach them about geothermal and their engineers like, no, we know how to do this and this. We don't want to mess with that. This is tried and true. And then it takes the time to, okay, we just sit and talk and work you through how this works. It's actually really simple. And if they're open to it, a lot of times we can convince them to go ahead and connect.
Very excited for that. Thank you.
Chair Gravatt, I have a question on that.
Yes, Commissioner Collette.
Steve, are there any incentives to get developers to use geothermal?
Chair, Commissioner Collette, we do have incentives for larger buildings where they'll get, what we see in the first year is that when the building's trying to dial in the geothermal use, a lot of times there'll be leaks in the system or they're overusing because the valve remains on too long. So in the past, we have offered 1 free year of water, basically, just like you figured out. We don't want to have to keep coming back and figuring out, like, just get your system dialed in and then we can start charging. We do have some incentives in the Central Addition area of town where we're trying to promote the collection water use. So when the water goes into a building at 177, if it's an efficient building, it'll come back out to us at maybe, I don't know, say 110. That 110 still has heat that can be used. So it goes into the other pipe, the collection pipe. Well, we're experimenting in the Central Addition with having people pull the 110 water in to see if they can use it to a beneficial use and bring it back into the pipe, the collection system even cooler. So there are some incentives around that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. I'm wondering, is the construction that's going on Warm Springs right now, that's part of a fix, yeah? The geothermal, is that, as I drive by it a lot, and I thought that's what that was.
Chair Commissioner Ellis. Yes, the Warm Springs district passed a bond 2 years ago to fund the replacement of that, one of the main lines coming down Warm Springs. Yep.
Now we'll talk a little bit about municipal irrigation. So the City of Boise Public Works also operates irrigation utility, for lack of a better term, for operation. So subdivisions built within the last 10 years are eligible to hook up to the city's municipal irrigation system. Right now, we have about 15 subdivisions, and the team that works on that is currently looking at how we can grow that, expand that. And really, while that may seem like a relatively small number, it's an important part as we start to look at kind of strategic water resources, as how important water is in a high desert city, making sure that we maximize surface water, making sure that, thinking about water fit for use, using the right water for the right purposes. In other words, not always utilizing drinking water for watering your lawn. So this is a really important component when we look at the big picture strategic water piece on how the city of Boise can maximize some of its water resources.
I would just add, Colin, that the broader topic of water supply was something we were going to maybe have on the list. It's not ready just yet, in part because we're looking at some alternatives or some options with the irrigation side of the house. So we'll keep folks posted as we get into kind of that bigger picture water supply planning, and one water approach is what we refer to. Not ripe just yet for 24, but maybe in 25. I think it'll be further along.
Streetlights quickly, as you all have driven around, walked around, you probably noticed streetlights. Public Works owns and operates the streetlight system, and it's a combination of ownership by the city. Some are owned by Idaho Power. There's about 10,000 lights in our system, with adding roughly 300 new streetlights each year. On to climate action. So someone mentioned the myth about Commissioner Ellis. You were talking about some of the myths. The photo on the left there is the glass recycling. There, that was another common myth that we heard a lot about. So within the Climate Action Division, what the bodies of work that are encompassed are trash recycling, compost services, the water resources, like we just mentioned, working on clean energy solutions for not only our facilities, but also for the community, focusing on alternative transportation and fuel options, climate and clean energy plans, the climate action roadmap that was adopted several years ago, but then also looking at climate resilience within the city and efforts that could provide additional resilience within Boise. Quickly, a reminder of the city of Boise's climate goals. You'll see 4 of them there on starting on the left. In 2030, 100% clean electricity within city government. Then by 2035, the goal is to be carbon neutral within city government. And then going over to the right side, clean electricity for the community by 2035 as well. And then a goal of carbon neutral by 2050 within the community.
If I can just jump in on the goals. We're tabulating the greenhouse gas emissions both for city operations and for the community every year. And it takes about a year to process the information. So for our most recent year, complete year, we were down 3% for the community on carbon emissions. That's even with growth in Boise. And then we were 18% down for city operations for carbon emissions. Now we'll see the numbers, they're going to bobble a little bit up and down, but hopefully we're going to keep that downward trajectory. So there's progress being made. And then we have a fairly big announcement on Monday that I can't say what exactly it is, but it's going to get to a chunk of this clean energy piece that we're really excited about. How's that for a tease?
Commissioner Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Director. I won't push you on the details for that, but I do want to ask about the, sounds like you're developing a baseline, or maybe there is a baseline so that you'll be able to measure and have indicators, if you will, of the progress that the city's making towards goals. Because I don't know that I've seen anything like that, at least out in the public domain. And that's something that when I was reading the materials, this particular one, I thought that's something that seems like a really important priority to be able to tell the story, because on whether or not we're making progress and how that progress line looks.
Chair, Commissioner Morris, thank you for that. And we do need to do a better job of communicating that. We have lots of data that we track, and we've baselined it back to, look at Steve, if he's here. He's not here. Okay. We baseline it back, I want to say to 2005. I'll have to go back and look, but we have data sets. We used to track every 5 years. Now we're doing on an annual basis, and we have a lot of detail. It would probably make sense for us to at some point, I know we're going to focus on a topic, right? But we do want to have other updates on other things we're working on, just quick hitters. That could be one that we share with you. Just here's our mix of carbon emissions in Boise, greenhouse gas emissions, where it's coming from, both for the city operations as well as the community. Here's where we've been trending over the past 5 years. You'll see some of the bobble that I'll talk about, that I just talked about. And then some of the big initiatives where there could be some big chunks, big leaps. I was just talking to a group today about like a lot of this is going to be incrementalism, waiting for that big disruption. And a big disruption will be 100% clean electricity. Well, how do you set yourself up for that? You start to electrify. You try to get your buildings all electric. You try to get your fleet all electric so that when that disruption comes, you're prepared. So we can show like some of those big chunks that'll be happening in the coming years that'll get us down to the 100% clean electricity, but also that carbon neutrality. And just something to note on the 2050 number. I was just over at Boise Entrepreneurs Week, and we were presenting on the last 15 to 20% of that goal. We don't have the technology yet. So part of that is to engage the business community. We're just out at INL last fall, looking at some of the research they're doing. We're going to need help. Like we don't have all the answers on that yet. And that's really often the hardest part. The hardest chunk is that last 10%, 15%.
Chair and Commissioner Wernz, if I could steal my own thunder as well, we'll have a discussion topic a little bit later. And that's one of the questions is what what does the department need to do a better job of communicating and talking with about the community, so that that will be well placed in that discussion. Just quickly, the climate action priority areas, again, I won't read through these. These are available on the website where you can dive deeper, but buildings and energy, transportation, consumption and waste, food systems, natural environment, water, and innovation and engagement, the piece that Steve just mentioned on how we're going to close the gap on some of the ways that we don't know how to get there quite yet.
And just a quick addition on the way these set up is on the buildings and energy side and transportation, that's kind of focused on emissions reduction. On the right side with natural environment and water, that's kind of getting to the resilience, right? So we're focused on emission reductions. It's a big priority in the overall program, but we also have to acknowledge that climate change is happening and will continue to happen. So how are we setting up the city to react and respond to those changes that we know are coming? That's part of the resiliency piece. So for example, water is a big part of that. So it's kind of a continuum of emissions, and over here on the right is the resilience side, and how do we address both issues?
Let me, Chair, if I may pause here. That was a lot of content. That kind of covers the broad overview. And before we get into the financial piece, which I'll tease up here in a bit, let me just pause and, Chair, turn it back over to you if there's any. There's a lot of content.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Lockett.
Mr. Chair, I do have two questions, please, if I may. Can you repeat, please, the number that you talked about on the streetlights? It sounded so high. I wanted to make sure I heard it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will go back to that slide.
And then while you're looking for that, that was going to be one of my comments for later, is I hadn't thought about who takes care of the streetlights. We just have light, and so that's one thing that I learned or sort of put together. So 03, okay. I
Yeah.
did mishear. It sounded like 30,000 or something, and it just couldn't be possible. So 10,000 lights, 300 new ones. What's very briefly, because this is probably like not that interesting for other folks, but how do you determine, other than the obvious like process through, the planning, I'm assuming, and then the PUDs and whatever else you guys do, but like on my street, for example, there's probably like 3 or 4 different kinds of streetlights. And I'm like, this is weird. You drive down and there's some that are straight up, and then you get further down and there's like the new kind that sort of neck out to have the can over the top, right? So you don't have light pollution, which is great. But then you have a different one and it just sort of seems inconsistent. I live in an older neighborhood, so that's to be expected. But what briefly, please, what is the process on streetlights?
Chair, Commissioner Lockett. So there's specific standards that we ask for, and so that's evolved over time. So back in the 60s, there were probably the ones that didn't help on the light pollution front. Now the standards are those ones that reach out and then keep the light pollution directed down. In the program itself, as you alluded to, is part of the planning and zoning process as a new development or new homes are coming in. It gets reviewed through the process. Engineering takes a look. Is it following the standards that we set forth? And then once it does, then we take those over once they're constructed. We do have a fund that's set up, and I want to say it's about 25,000 a year, where you can request, let's say a neighborhood association feels like, well, this intersection isn't very well lit, or we'd like to see a light at this school. You can make that request, and we can kind of rack and stack those to get those funds.
Thank you for that. So is the idea that eventually all of them will be similar, as technology changes? I get it, right? There's always an asterisk and a caveat, but the idea is that eventually, as different streetlights are replaced, they'll be more consistent and I'll have those hoods, et cetera, kind of across the city.
Chair, Commissioner, that's the intent. Now we may see 20 years from now a completely new
Right.
focus, so we'd have to pivot. But yes, that's the intent, is to try to keep it as standardized as possible.
Thank you. My other question was about the glass and the recycling, because I did want to ask about the status of glass recycling. Like, I don't actually know. And so if I don't know, other people don't know, right?
Yeah, Chair, Commission member, if I could perhaps invite Peter up. I would do a terrible job explaining the status of the glass program, so Peter can explain it way more eloquently.
Good afternoon, everybody. Peter McCullough, Materials Management Programs Manager. To answer your question, Commissioner Lockett, our glass program, we're really proud of it because it actually recycles the glass locally inside Boise. We have a great partner called Environmental Abrasives. They are located out in Southeast Boise, kind of near the Fred Meyer out there. They take all the glass that we collect. We have 10 drop-off sites throughout town where people can go for free, drop off their glass bottles. It's just glass bottles, jars, obviously no like windows or anything like that, just glass bottles and jars. And then we also have a program where you can get a cart at your house, a separate glass cart. And I believe that's somewhere around $6 a month for people who have a lot of glass. And so it all goes to the same place. It's all collected and taken and recycled here in Boise. The Environmental Abrasives company takes that, breaks it down, grinds it down to different grits. Sometimes they combine it with some other materials that they collect, and they use that as a sandblasting material and sell it throughout the country. And so it's a great partnership, like I said, and we hope that the community embraces the recycling and participates.
Thank you. That's
Chair.
really helpful. Oh,
I was just going to add that isn't there outside the buildings like little pots with the glass in there? And I think it like has little placards that speak to it. And so I think that's a really cool way to promote it. I don't know if there's other places around the city where that education for the glass programming could be available.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Morgan, that we do have a couple of those outside City Hall. That was, we just did that last year. And, we just want to showcase it more because I think, as you've noted, people want to see what's happening to the material and why they should take the extra time to recycle. So we'll definitely try to, we also take some of the glass to some of our community events and let people feel it and look at it and play with it. Some people want some for their kids to play with, but we weren't able to accomplish that yet, but we'll think about it.
thank you. And a follow-up, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so is there a backlog of the recycling, or are you kind of caught up on like the pile that's there, for lack of a better word?
Oh, sure. For the glass recycling you're
Yeah.
referring to. Sure. Yes. We don't have a backlog. I wouldn't say there's always a pile there, and Environmental Abrasives wants a pile so that they can process it as when needed. So we have enough, but we don't have too much, if that answers your question.
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I'll just say to your question on streetlights, it's the most often unintentional question that I get when I'm out in the community. Just it comes up. People don't know that Public Works is involved in the streetlights. So it's just always there. Commissioner Moritz?
Now you got me thinking about streetlights. I just have to ask the question about there must be a story as to why Idaho Power and the city divide streetlights. I mean, is there a short answer? It's kind of strange.
Chair, Commissioner Lawrence, I was afraid you were going to ask that. I'll have to go back and I don't know the history. I'm sure it was a long time ago, some kind of agreement was struck, but I can go back and take a look and figure it out.
I'm just curious how Idaho Power gets paid for the service or yeah, thank you.
Chair Gravatt, I have a question as well.
Commissioner Collette?
Sorry, back to geothermal. My own question earlier got me kind of thinking, and when I've worked on projects before and developers have been involved in sustainability, it's generally been with LEED rating, and various incentives that people will do that, but it's usually something to do with marketability. And so does the city work with USGBC or with any of the local LEED raters to try and encourage people to use geothermal, or has that not been explored? Or is it really just such a small portion of land in Boise that it's even available that it's not really worth the effort?
Chair, Commissioner Collette. Yes, we do work with those entities. We're growing those relationships. the realtors in particular. It's really coming back to developers. Although I will say that one of our priorities moving forward is to start thinking about how do we infill along the existing system rather than extending lines. Extending lines are very expensive,
Mhm.
frankly. We'll still do that on a case-by-case basis, but if you look at the graphic up there, the map, there's a lot of buildings that geothermal runs right in front of that aren't connected, and that's happened for whatever reason. But at some point, they're going to replace their HVAC system, and there are certain types of HVAC systems that could convert fairly easily over to geothermal. So one of our initiatives is to talk to the folks that can help us make connections to those buildings to figure out when those conversions need to happen. Can we talk to you? Or start the conversation now, 5 to 10 years before the conversion needs to happen. So it's a really good point. We're starting to reach out to certain groups, but we can definitely improve on that.
Well, I mean, just thinking in, HVAC systems, those are so expensive. And what sort of educational efforts are happening right now to make people aware that that's even something that's an option for them?
And we're ramping those up. That's part of the new geothermal coordinator. John Gunnarsson, who's the geothermal system manager, has been awesome. He's just so busy just getting, we've had several big projects downtown this summer, just keeping the system up and running. And so he just can't get to all of that. That's one of the big reasons we brought in the coordinator to start making those connections and educating folks downtown on, did you know that geothermal exists? Did you know this is what it would take to connect, et cetera?
And then this is just because I'm curious and have sort of been involved in the project, but is the new YMCA development on geothermal?
Pretty sure, is it Block 68? Is that what it's
Mhm.
called? I'm pretty sure they're going to be connected to geothermal. They have the current Y is, I think everything is connected to geothermal, including the pool heating. And I think that new building is going to be connected to geothermal,
Probably then, yeah.
but I can confirm.
Thank you.
And Chair Commissioner, if I could add to that, I believe it was last year, the geothermal team partnered with Climate Action Team as well as in the mayor's office, the Innovation and Performance Team. And as part of their strategic planning, we did like a design sprint over several months. And what that included was significant stakeholder interviews, engagement, talking to developers, building owners, just about, what is effective? Why would you use it? Why wouldn't you? Why would you connect? And it was incredibly illuminating on a number of different topics. So that definitely is front of mind going forward for the program.
And I think to add to that, kind of is the stakeholders that would be worth speaking to would be local architects, because they really are very involved in the decision making. And if that's something they're pushing, you're probably more likely to get it.
Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. You got me thinking about when I used to live in the East End, and in 2002, I lived on the corner of East State and Maple. And if you look at that, it's like half a block away from that one of those T of the green on there. And I remember asking someone, the city started talking about what it would take to get it to my block. And it was going to be, who knows what the number they were throwing, it was like $60,000 just to get it that half block. But then I still had to get it to my house. There was going to be all sorts of other fees to get it. So I was going to enlist my whole block to go in on it together. I didn't get very far, but you made me think about how do you incentivize people. At that point, I didn't have the wherewithal to do it all, but I had a glimmer of hope there for a minute.
Chair Commissioner, that's a really good point that you bring up, though, is the reason it works for us downtown is the economies of scale. It really works well for really large buildings. It starts to get less cost effective for smaller, and then pretty challenging on the residential side. So it's a good point.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, and back to you.
Chair, Commission members, just as a heads up, we're nearing the end of this presentation, and then we'll get into the topic selection for next year. So thank you all for hanging in. And as a reminder that when we talked through kind of the commission reset, one of the questions that we were batting back and forth was how we present the financial components. We had presented it over multiple meetings over time. And so where we landed for this time, just for the orientation, was to provide a few high-level slides understanding that it's not going to be a deep dive into the financials, but that's one piece that we can continue to explore with commission is are there ways that we want to bring back additional pieces to do a bit deeper dive into any financial components. But today we're joined by Matt Millis, who is the enterprise revenue manager for Public Works, and he'll run the commission through a couple high-level overview slides of the financials.
Members of the commission, it's a pleasure to be here this evening. Again, my name's Matt Millis. I am standing in for Heather Buchanan, who is on some very well-deserved vacation right now. And so again, wanted to talk very high level about some of the financial concepts. As a process of creating the fiscal year 24 budget, we did prepare several presentations and reports and packets that we presented at the beginning of this year, about February through May. I would encourage you to look to those packets if you'd like some of the details on looking at the numbers, the very high level numbers that we'll discuss here this evening. So we right now are just about to start the process to prepare the fiscal year 2025 budget. And just as Colin mentioned, we're going to be preparing that and then presenting that to the commission a little bit later than what we had done in the past. I'm presuming the May 2024 meeting. So within Public Works, we have a couple different structures of financial funds. One of those is a general fund, and then one is the enterprise fund. And I'm going to start talking a little bit about the enterprise fund because that really is how the majority of our services are structured through an enterprise fund approach. The enterprise fund, they also often call them business funds because they're a self-supporting fund that focuses on one type of service. So right now we have 4 enterprise funds. We have the water renewal system, the solid waste curbit, the geothermal system, and municipal irrigation, each one of those within its own separate enterprise funds. The reason why we call it kind of a self-supporting business type fund is we provide a service to the community. We know what the costs are of providing that service, and then we need to charge our rates and fees to be able to recover the costs of operating that. So as we send our bills out every so often for our users for any one of these services, what we are doing is recovering the costs of operating as well as building the facilities, maintaining and repairing facilities for the system. When we collect those revenues, so for example, the revenues that may come into the water renewal enterprise fund, we keep those revenues only within water renewal. We cannot use those for geothermal. We cannot use them for solid waste. They have to stay within the fund in which they were collected. So every so often we'll do a cost of service study, a COSS, as I show up there in the abbreviation, that we take all our costs, and year to year things will shift around a little bit. We may have more customers of one type than another, or we may have other types of challenges or costs. So every so often we have to do a cost of service study that helps us say, what is the true fair cost that we should be recovering in our bills for the overall cost of O&M and capital for water renewal, as an example. So we also maybe include a very, very small amount for maintaining just a cash reserve that would help us to offset times where we may have less revenues than expected, or times when we may have more expenses than expected. So that's kind of a summary of an enterprise fund. And so if there's no other questions, I'll move forward into our first and largest one. So our largest enterprise fund is the Water Renewal Fund. And as we had discussed a little bit earlier this evening, has significant capital investment, $3 billion in between the existing and future capital improvements. The operational budget for all our facilities is about $75 million for water renewal. On top of that, we also have a significant capital improvement plan that we're working on right now to lay out what investments do we need to make over the next 20 years. So for 20 years, for example, in fiscal year 2024, the capital budget of about $52 million was adopted. And so with that, there's a variety of projects that are required to expand capacity within the system, meet regulatory requirements, meet some of our repair and replacement needs, as well as just work towards our level of service goals, which is how can we benefit the community with our water renewal system. One real positive that we have was in helping to fund our capital improvements was in November of 2021, Boise voters approved an authorization of about $570 million in bonds that we can use between 2022 to 2031 to help pay for our capital improvement projects. And the bonds help to lower our user rates for our customers, because rather than having to collect the cash up front through rates to pay for those projects, we're able to amortize that capital cost over a 30-year period of time, much like we would a mortgage on our house or a loan on our car. So with that, every year, and also included in the fiscal year 2024 planning documents that would be available from, say, last May, we look at what our rates should be and how those compare with within the community. So in 2022, we had an average rate within our region, within the Treasure Valley region, of about $38.66. Boise was slightly higher than that in 2022 at $43.46. And with the proposed increase for 2024, we're up just a little bit at $46.72. We are maybe slightly on the higher side for the Treasure Valley as a whole. But one of the reasons why that is we don't necessarily always know what the status of the planning for the other communities are. Boise is very proud and puts a lot of work into full cost planning for the facilities, not just for today, but really anticipating needs into the future. And that's reflected in our rates. We don't know and can't say for the others. And also the other thing is some of these other communities may also be on the verge of raising their rates as well. So.
Yes, Commissioner Lockett.
Thank you. Question, please. So on that, we're going from $43 to $46 potentially over the 1 year. What, trying to figure out how to ask, what portion of that $3 is attributable to the bonds and what portion is sort of like costs go up, we get it? Asked a different way, if that question doesn't make sense in that way, asked another way, like how far are we into the bonding authorization of the $570 million?
Sure. Commissioner Gravatt, Councilmember Lockett, two great questions. Let me address on the $570 million. We have that full authorization through 2031. We've already issued $80 million through a fiscal year 2022 bond, essentially referred to as a Series 22 water renewal revenue bond that was about $80 million. We've also committed to, we've also have commitments with the federal government through the WIFIA program, which is the Water Investment Finance Innovation Act. And that WIFIA program will be about $400 million of loans that we will receive from about 2025 out through, I want to say, about 2031. That leaves about $90 million of authorization that's not yet been committed yet. And so as we're doing our financial planning over the next year or so, we're going to find perhaps more specific uses of how we will best utilize that $90 million. So the second question regarding how much of that $3 something increase was related to the bonds. I would have to say, in my opinion, and we can get more details. I mean, there's first of all, so many components that are coming together to form the amount of revenue that we need to have. A lot of it's operational expenses blended with capital, blended with bond payments. I don't know that we can really put a finger on one specific thing, but what we have seen is significant cost inflation in general over all components. We've seen it over O&M, capital expenses, and so forth. If anything, I would think that probably the ability to use those bonds would have reduced our overall cost for users.
And then maybe just add, excuse me, the WIFIA, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, we've issued the 80 million. The WIFIA will basically, we will quote unquote issue it, but we'll only draw what we need as we go. So it won't be incurring interest right at the start of whenever we actually agree to that WIFIA loan. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. And that is one of the real positives of the WIFIA program, is unlike a traditional bond where even if you use it for 3 years, it takes 3 years to use all the proceeds, you're paying for the full interest. WIFIA only charges us for the interest for what we've actually drawn. So that is a very positive aspect of that. Okay, thank you. So moving on to the solid waste or curb it fund and program. We have an operational budget of about $45 million. And that's split largely between our contract service agreement with Republic Services that does does all our waste hauling for recycling, compost, and trash. We also work with Ada County Landfill, who receives and disposes of our trash. And then we also have programs and costs for salaries, wages, and other programs that the city itself administers. So our largest cost overall is related to our service contract with Republic Services. They're our largest expense. Now with Republic Services, typically you would think of a trash utility and you'd think of all the trucks and all the drivers and all the, the equipment and so forth that is required to haul trash for a community the size of Boise. All the costs of the equipment and vehicles are really handled under the service agreement with Republic Services. We ourselves are not having to buy garbage trucks and a lot of the equipment that's required. So our actual capital outlay is very, very small. I think in the past we've funded a site where someone could take and receive compost. We may have a vehicle or two or another small piece of equipment, but essentially our $45 million is almost exclusively for the cost of operations. So with our rate projections for 2024, as we again look at the Treasure Valley area, the current average is about $23.91. So Boise, as of 2022, as 2023, we currently are charging about $22.41 for a user that has both trash or has all three of trash, compost, and recycling. So we are proposing that for fiscal year 2024, that we increase that to $23.51. So we are staying just slightly below the average rate for all of the communities for what we tried to work out as a similar set of services and benefits received. Okay. So finally, moving on to geothermal. The geothermal fund has an operational budget of approximately $1 million. And with that, we are funding our operation and maintenance expense. And then there's also a small additional amount of capital that is used for repair and replacements, maintaining the system, and any repairs that can be very proactive to prevent future breaks and O&M expenses for the future. So again, as Colin had mentioned, the geothermal system is not something we can expand significantly. It's really focused just on the downtown core and some of the BSU buildings. The revenues within this fund are highly dependent upon the severity of a winter time. And so if we have a very cold winter, we're going to see a lot more geothermal revenues and water sales occur, as opposed to a very mild winter where we may struggle to collect our revenue targets for the year. So that's one thing that as we look at this geothermal fund, we try to maintain good fund balances, again, for the purposes of if revenues were to come in a little lower, we have a little bit more fund balance to be able to cover those O&M expenses. As mentioned in this presentation earlier, there's a lot of reasons on why a building may choose to use geothermal as opposed to another. One of those is that for the last few years, the pricing of natural gas heating versus the pricing of geothermal heating have been very, very similar. And as a building manager, there may be a decision of which is looking mostly just at cost effectiveness. They may say, they may be torn or a little bit on the fence on which of the options is better. And so we're excited also with the geothermal coordinator to be able to have more great conversations with our customers to not only just focus on the cost benefit ratios, but also looking at some of our other environmental goals that we're looking at, such as lowering our carbon footprints and so forth. And we feel like that will continue to help us to grow our geothermal customer base.
And Chair, Commissioner Collette, following up on your question, one of the things that we can do a better job of explaining to customers is if you can get really efficient with the amount of heat you're taking off the water, you can actually beat natural gas prices. If you're less efficient, it can be less competitive. So encouraging folks to take as much heat as they can to make sure that they can reap the savings. We're trying to get that information out to folks.
Okay, and then to our smallest enterprise fund, municipal irrigation fund, we have an O&M budget of about $55,000 with very, very limited, if any, capital project expense. So the municipal irrigation system is very, very stable. We don't see much variation in terms of water sales or expenses. And so that fund is doing quite well and do not see much need to really focus on planning and so forth of the financial needs for that utility. So no, you're great. So the last type of funds, so we talked about enterprise funds, where it's kind of a self-sufficient business type related fund. The last type is a general fund, which focuses more on kind of traditional governmental services of, keeping government buildings clean and operating well, or lighting streets with the street lighting program, looking at drainage issues, doing plan reviews and so forth. So the general fund is portioned out to different departments. And so the Public Works Department has a small portion of general fund operations. And what we focus on within the Public Works portion of the general fund is the facility program management, facility services and operations. And those two help with the planning of municipal buildings such as fire stations and so forth, as well as the maintenance and cleaning of, say, the city hall, some of the library, some of the parks facilities and so forth. And then we also have, again, municipal lighting, drainage, hillside review permitting. We have a small portion of a stormwater that we manage. just developing and improving our water supplies, and then the climate action programs that were mentioned earlier in the evening. So all told, these expenses are about $10.7 million as planned and budgeted for fiscal year 2024. So with the general fund, unlike the water renewal fund, where we know what the expenses are, and then we have to charge a fee to recover that full cost of the expense. With the general fund, we have several different services and fees that we offer for inspection and so forth. And we generate about $1.2 million for those services and fees. The remainder is all brought in, is all covered through intergovernmental revenues, which would be things such as property taxes, fees, like liquor licenses, franchise fees, those type of just general governmental revenues that cover that difference between about the $1.2 million that we generate on our own fees and the $10.7 million for the full cost of the fund. So again, we also have a very small capital portion because we're really focused on services, but we have capital projects for 2024 at about $2.26 million. So that's kind of a summary of the general fund, and that concludes my portion of the slide. So Mr. Chair, if you have any questions or
Any
comments.
questions from the commission? It's like none, so back to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
So Chair, I apologize. I've got to run to a kid event. So I'm going to leave you in Colin's good hands. And we'll see you, excuse me, in November as my voice cracks. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Chair, commission members. So again, we promised to talk way less at you, but it felt like for this first orientation, there was some of that required. But if I may add a first bullet here, which is just how was that orientation? Was it too much information, not enough? Would be certainly all ears if and want to try to capture that feedback while it's timely and just coming off of that. We tried to strike the right balance of providing that high level overview, but would welcome any input at this time if we hit the mark or need to keep refining as we go forward. And then also we'll turn it over to you, Chair, on these other two discussion points that we're very eager to hear from the commission.
Right, Commission, was that illuminating or did it feel like staff splaining?
Chair Gravatt?
Yes,
Yeah,
Commissioner Collette.
Yeah, I thought that was perfect. Definitely gave me a good overview. I mean, I knew quite a bit of it already, but filled in some gaps for me. Was really nice and concise and clear and had good hierarchy and was outlined very well.
Commissioner Wertz.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll add, same point, and the budget summary was really good too.
Commissioner Morgan.
I won't second that, but I'll third that.
We have a second and a third. Awesome. Yeah, I'll fourth it. I think it's all very good. I would also be super interested in having a much slimmer version, just like a one pager that maybe doesn't go into the budget details, but like a one pager of quick reference. Here's the overview. That I think that would be a useful tool for engaging with folks like neighborhood associations and maybe some business groups. Any other input? All right, then dive into the discussion. All right. So we have two questions up on the board here. We'll open with question one. Was there anything that you found most surprising or didn't know prior? I know that streetlights seems to be one up toward the top of that list. Any other surprises? Commissioner Wertz?
I think, I guess maybe it's not a surprise, but I didn't actually know that there's a separate public hearing for rate increases to that. And so it was in the material somewhere. And I thought, oh, yeah, makes sense.
Any other responses? Commissioner Ellis?
I guess it wasn't surprising, but I hadn't really seen the numbers on the streetlights. So just seeing that number was impressionable. Yeah, hadn't stuck with me before.
Right. Anything else? Should we move to question 2? Thinking about how the department engages with the community, is there an area or are there areas of work you think Boiseans should know more about and why? Commissioner Collette.
I guess it's more of a question. You think about, you hear about people complaining about paying taxes and paying rates and all that. And I think when people understand where that's going to, it's much easier to digest. And, I think, is there any sort of engagement with kids at school level, aside from taking them to, the kids are really taught at a young age that this is why you pay taxes, this is why you pay these fees, these are the services you get. It's not just something that you do because you're told to do it by the government, but it's a service that you're receiving. Does that sort of engagement exist?
Chair, Commission member, I would say at some level, at the watershed team who does our community engagement, education for all ages really, but they try to do a good job of connecting, what you pay for with your utility to the services you receive. I would also say that was a big focus of the water renewal utility plan, was educating. We started at the very basic level. Do you even know who provides your water renewal services at the city of Boise? Do you know what comes with a rate? And we drew the parallel at that time of, with your cable bill, you get a number of services, and and for Steve jokes oftentimes that with water renewal, it's like, well, does it flush? Okay, yes or no. And then but I think to that point, we need to do a better job of continually educating and engaging our community about the services that are included in that utility bill. Because I think to that point, a lot of folks just receive their bill, say, okay, it works, but that's an area that we can definitely improve. And we have a community engagement team that builds engagement plans around that and education plans. So we'll definitely take that feedback as providing a bit more connection on paid for service.
Right. And I got thinking about it because I just recently watched a documentary on Finland and how they're, rated as the world's happiest country. And one of the kind of bullet points they came to is that, yes, they pay really high taxes, but they just know that with that comes all of these services that are provided to them. And they don't see it as being socialist. They see it as being self-serving because they know that they trust in their community where they pay those taxes and then they're guaranteed those services. And that kind of that mindset shift just makes a difference in community happiness, community engagement, people wanting to participate. And it's a huge thing to overcome, obviously, but it was a really interesting perspective.
I'll say just from my experience in seeing some of the educational programming, I think the team is pretty good at recognizing that kids aren't thinking a lot about taxes, but they are super interested in, they're also not great taxpayers most of the time, but they are super interested in some of the nitty gritty of what goes on in the public works domain. And I think that is a sort of representative sample of the sort of cusp, the transition that we're facing in the public works realm between the sign of a good public works department, a good water treatment service would be that nobody knew that you were doing the work.
Right.
Where now, because you're on the front lines and you're the very last thing that people think about or the first thing they think about when it goes wrong. But now we're on the front lines in a different way as we are sort of charting new goals in the public works realm for creating a city that's resilient in a number of ways and really trying to noodle through the creative opportunities that we have to offset the cost over time to meet some of those goals and create the kind of city that we want to see 20, 30, 100 years from now. And so I think some of that shift we're seeing happening right now as the community engagement team, the public works team broadly, does start shifting the framework of operations and the framework of engagement and communication away from that old model of invisibility into this sort of front line leading the charge of what the city of the future looks like in our reduce and reuse versus waste management, in our water renewal and water resiliency over water treatment. So I do think that is a good note to carry forward in our conversations and engagement with our networks, as well as to sort of start to frame our mindsets as we set our agenda for the next year and beyond.
And it just got me thinking as well, is that I think a lot of people want to be involved in the community. They don't necessarily know how to, but something as simple as I'm paying my rates when we have all
Mhm.
these kinds of initiatives, literally is, this is how you're engaging in your community. This is how you are making a better Boise. Because just by participating, you're enabling the city to do these fantastic things.
Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you, Chair Kavat. You're making me think of three things. The Boise Environmental Education, B. I wonder if this could be another added module. And they have like, what, over 100 different classes. It could be by grade and by topic under the umbrella of sustainability. I'm wondering if this could be a new module or maybe integrated into one of the existing modules. So there's all these classes that teachers can ask the city of Boise employee to come to their classroom, or they can go to the city of Boise depending on the location. And it's compost and you name it. There's biology type stuff too. And then I think there's a competition every year. A lot of times it's at BSU and it's like Future City. Does that sound right? That would be an incredible opportunity to engage parents and students about the city of Boise. I think some of them would be amazed that maybe the things they're coming up with Boise is already doing in public work. And then I had a third one and I'm already escaped. When we get our student, it would be on our board, on the commission, it would be interesting to see what that person would think about how to engage families and students in our community about, what if they saw the video of Finland and how they, as a role model. Anyway, those are ideas. Thank you for making me think about those. It's fun.
And I think those are all specific examples that speak to the broader role and responsibility that I feel that we have in our unique spot as a commissioner, not a staff member of the city or another member of the public. We have the unique ability to go in and find out the opportunities for creating these synergies, these networks and connections that may not exist otherwise, because I think that one of the things that was mentioned is that none of the goals that we set can be done entirely alone. We're all in this together. And so finding ways that we can support those, foster those connections and relationships to be more sustainable into the future, I think is incumbent on us. Any other input ideas from the commission? All right, I don't know if we hit both of the questions that we had up there. All right, well, with that, I will turn it back to you. Was that the last item on that,
It is, Chair.
on the overview? All right, well, with that brings us to the final regular item on our regular agenda, the Public Works Commission FY24 topics selection. And I'll turn it back to you.
Chair, commission members, appreciate that. And what we tried to do with the packet around these topics is rank them, prioritize them in a way that, going back to Commissioner Collette's point about value for staff, we tried to provide a bit of ranking so that we weren't just throwing out a bunch of ideas and saying, here, choose one. We certainly want to provide commission with a voice, with a choice in the topics that we bring forward every year. But we also tried to put some of our thoughts behind it into, hey, this is where we're at around scoping, around readiness with the topic, and also around value that we think we would be ready to ask commission to provide. So we're hopeful that we did that with these items. And if I could ask Amanda to share those. So and let's go into presentation mode, please. Hold on 1 second. All right, Chair, Commission members. So the three topics that we brought forward for consideration for the commission to take up for this fiscal year. One would be recycled water program, two, the solid waste strategic plan, and three, utility affordability. I only have a slide per topic because I really want, again, us not to talk so much at you, but really to have, for the commission to have a discussion about what the topic or topics are that you all want to tackle for this year. Recycled water program, you're probably more familiar with since we just had the discussion at the last commission meeting, but we also wanted to include some of the topics that we see as some real value, commission providing input on the longer term strategic planning around this program. So some of the topics could include groundwater recharge, some of the policies that you already helped to weigh in on, including the highest and best use policy, integrating diversity, equity, inclusion within the program, some of the workforce development planning. How do we ensure that we have the workforce and a pipeline and ongoing development of our staff to ensure a successful program? And then also some input and feedback around a community benefit strategy. So that's the recycled water program. And as we kind of ranked those, we put this one up top simply because it's scoped the best. We're the furthest along. We have staff that are ready to bring content forward starting in November. So if this was the direction that commission wanted to go, I would say this one would be the most ready for your consideration. We could bring the most robust content quickest back to you all. The materials management, apologies. Yes.
Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you, Chair Kavat. I just wanted to make a comment. I'm admiring the picture that you accompanied with this because I believe that picture was taken the day I had the opportunity to go see the recycled water program. And the person viewing the display with the hat on, I just have to mention this because it's like so representative of why you have volunteers on a public works commission, why you get volunteers for Curb It Pro and for livability ambassadors. It was her birthday. And she wanted to celebrate her birthday at the recycled water program. And she enlisted all her friends to join her. And I just think that was incredible. And I'm really glad that you picked that picture. That is Boise in a nutshell.
Chair, Commissioner, thanks for sharing that story. And we have Deanne here too from the, do you remember that day? Yeah. The second is the materials management strategic plan, or CURBIT strategic plan. Strategic plans are really important to the department, to the city at large. A couple examples of recent strategic plans that we've undertaken. I refer to often the water renewal utility plan, which set the strategic direction for water renewal services, but also our climate action team undertook a climate action roadmap, which is essentially a strategic plan for climate action and resilience in the city of Boise. Looking at a CURBIT strategic plan, I think for the content around what that would include, you'll notice that this one is still kind of nebulous and we're just not there on scoping it as far as, what kind of goals would it include, whether it's waste reduction goals, whether it's looking at operations. I still think that's to be determined. As far as the role of Public Works Commission, we see Public Works Commission having the ability to play a pretty critical role in helping shape whatever the solid waste strategic plan looks like, providing early input so that we can take a lot of that to a consultant that we would theoretically bring on board to help shape what the plan looks like, the community input, but essentially a strategic plan around our trash, recycling, compost, and reduce and reuse efforts in the city of Boise. A couple more tactical things on next steps. The CURBIT team is looking at potentially bringing on a consultant, someone that specializes in these sort of strategic plans. That would be fall or winter, with beginning the work in winter or spring of 2024. And again, we put this one kind of next down on the rung because we probably would need some additional time before we could have meaningful content that we could bring back to commission. But we also know it's important and a topic of real interest to you all in the community. So wanted to include that there as well. And then the last, where we had kind of third on the list, due to the fact that it would require the most amount of scoping and staff time to have it ready to bring forward to you all would be around our utility affordability efforts. We currently have several programs that exist, including hardship discount, emergency water utility assistance, low-income water assistance, leak adjustments. But really, this topic would look at how we reimagine and refine affordability in our community around our utilities. We have partner utilities across the country that are doing some innovative things, doing some new things that we're constantly keeping tabs on. And this is an area that we think commission could be really helpful in helping us look at from a very early stage. But again, this one would require the most scoping, probably wouldn't be ready for a few months, but we also wanted to give commission the opportunity to weigh in if this would be a topic that you all would be interested in. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair, but I think kind of these all are in the same bucket, if you will, around topic selection. I do think if I could add some color on the third one, the third bullet there, one of the things that we've wrestled a little bit with is if we want to go with just one topic, say recycled water for the year, you'll certainly get a lot more depth of that topic. It'll give you continuity from meeting to meeting, but also you perhaps would lack some diversity in topics. So just something to consider, that you would get more depth, but perhaps lose a little bit of the breadth of topics as you make your selection. So with that, turn over to the chair for some discussion, and happy to answer any questions that come up.
All right, commission, any of these questions pop to the top of your mind with any feedback?
Chair Gravett,
Commissioner Collette?
just personal opinion, I like the idea of really going deep dive into one thing and really fully understanding, so that any question that comes your way, you're actually able to address.
Chair.
Commissioner Morgan?
Selfishly, I really love Kerbit, but I recognize it's not ready. And I'm also interested in water renewal. So I would love to be able to touch on both. And I think it was noted in our packet that we would probably, if there was interest in the later two, that there would be water renewal maybe at the beginning and then working toward the other ones as you build out the scoping. So I have an interest in that, but recognize that materials management might not be for everybody.
Commissioner Burns?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess it's a little hard for me to weigh in with the framework a little bit. I mean, if things aren't ready to talk about, then you focus on what you're ready to talk about. But it does seem also a little constrained to say, let's just look at one item for the year. It seems like you could have a couple of concurrent things, and maybe you're not talking about both of them in the same meeting. But I'm a little resistant to just saying, let's just do one.
And I think the reason I had said one was saying it over a year sounds like, oh gosh, how are we going to talk something for a whole year? But it's really only 4 meetings. So it's not really that much. But I don't mind either way.
Sure. I would just throw my 2 cents in that I want to lean on staff to let us know what is the most additive for conducting the work and pitch in our input on what we're hearing from the community throughout the year. I'm also a little hesitant to commit to one topic throughout the year, but I would be open to it if we do that with the understanding that something could change January 2nd, and then we need to completely reconfigure and focus on something else. So whatever is the most additive over time, and revisiting that sort of at each meeting to adjust course as needed. Commissioner Ellis?
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. I am interested in all 3 topics wholeheartedly, and I would want you to come with us when you're ready. And I feel like there's a way to probably do all 3, whether they be staggered or yeah, and I'm a Kerbit Pro fan, so I'm always going to be on your side with that.
I would also say just sort of given my understanding of where we're at and some of the big decisions coming up soon, our water programming, it floats to the top of the list. Floats, for our unique role to help spread out information and gather input, and also to noodle through and be sort of messengers for some of the things that are going on in the city.
Chair, I'd parry with that and the curb it. I love that an emphasis that Steve or you made, that reduce and reuse is not something that has been focused on. And that is the most that's the most value that we can get, to be able to reduce the amount of waste that's happening in our community. So I just think there's a lot of untapped potential, and would love to be like a brain source for you guys to be able to like start noodling through those things that you may not begin to know, like, well, what are our questions? I just see that as a really exciting opportunity.
Commissioner Lockett.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to come out leave right at a pivotal time. You got really quickly to this last slide. I thought I had a minute. So my preference, because I've thought about this, is definitely topics 1 and 2. Certainly option 3, if time allows. And I would like to do maybe not multiple topics at the same meeting, but I don't want to go too long in between topics either, because I think we'll forget, particularly now that we're meeting quarterly. I think if we don't hit at least a little bit at every meeting, it could be 6 months, like the way the calendar would work, or 9 months before we hear about a topic again. So 1 and 2 are my preference. And I think some flexibility, as you said, is important on the topics.
Sort of have
And
one as like a main dish and then 1 or 2
Oh,
side
maybe.
dishes.
You're making me hungry. It's dinner time, right? So thank you. And then, well, I don't want you to repeat what I missed, but you said something, then you said something that you seconded that as well, but I didn't actually hear the words you said right at the end of your comments. And it sounded like you were in support of what Commissioner Morgan had said. Can you just repeat that last part? You're just very soft spoken.
Yeah, she had said that she was interested in all 3. So I was mimicking that, dittoing that I would enjoy listening to all 3 topics. And then she was kind of stressed the concern that she has a special interest in Curve It Pro, but maybe that's not for everybody. And I was letting her know that I'm a big fan of materials management. So I would always be excited about that topic.
Thank you. I think the Curb It's great. I mean, and that is the way to connect to the students, the kids. Like, I mean, my kids know like this is for this and this is for that. And then they forget and they put it in the wrong bin. And I'm like, you guys, and I'm sorting through. And these are not little kids anymore. Like, they should know the difference. But anyhow, enough about that. But I think it's a fabulous thing. And it is something that people care about. Like, they might not care much about some of these other things, but I think like the citizens will care about recycling because they see it and they use it every day, and trash, all of the Curb It stuff. So yes.
Chair, that
Commissioner
leads me to remind myself that this is one of the few programs where citizens themselves are empowered to be able to have decisions, whereas the other ones, they have less say in what happens. And not to say that the onus is on consumers to be able to fix the problems that were generated by not citizens. But I think it's really valuable to get them to feel like they are contributing towards solutions in their own community. Public Works is doing it beautifully already, working on that resiliency and sustainability, but to have some agency in the solutions is something that helps you feel more invested in your community and your city to be able to continue to work towards that resiliency.
Commissioner Wertz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a great conversation. I guess what I at least would throw out there too is, you put 3 topics out and there's interest in them from the commissioners, I'm hearing, and some effort to prioritize. But I think we're interested in that synergy of what does the department need from the commission? And I also really like the energy around wanting to work on the reduce, reuse, reduce, getting that whole prevention side geared up, that there's a lot of energy there. I think it's a really good topic. And then we also talked earlier in the meeting about climate. Just came up, the baseline for how is the city doing on reaching its goals. So there's a lot of energy on both sides. It doesn't mean we have to work on all the topics, but it seems like we should keep a tally of this short list, and the timeliness will evolve, where we want to really, okay, what, and we probably need to come back to, I don't think we have to decide we're only going to work on one this year. We could say, well, the department's not going to be ready until 2025 to talk about this. And then it might be teed up for that time period. But it seems like it shouldn't be like something we do once a year, but it's something that's more like a list of hot topics or important topics to be always considering.
One meeting that's just grab bag.
Yeah.
I would also throw out an idea for us to reconsider and reconfigure the way that our subcommittees might run. The way that they were structured previously, for those who may not know, and I may not give the most comprehensive description right now, but they were to dive deeper into some of the details on some of the larger projects undergone by the Public Works Department to offer more advice and counsel on specific components of X, Y, or Z. I was on the water renewal subcommittee, so diving deeper into the budget numbers or certain standards of treatment, et cetera, really getting into the nitty gritty of it that we didn't always have time in our monthly meetings then to really go over. But should we shift to have a larger topic with a more in-depth discussion as a full commission, then perhaps it would make more sense to dissolve those subcommittees and recreate new subcommittees that allow for more engagement on some of these topics that may not float to the level of being additive to have full staff and commission convened 4 times a year to discuss and could meet semi-regularly on a cadence that makes sense for a program like Curbit or something like that. If that sounds like something to noodle over. I don't know if that brings anything else to mind for you folks. Commissioner Morgan.
Chair, the only concern that I have there, I'm very intrigued by that, but I don't want it to be additional work for the staff to be able to meet our needs. I want to be as serviceable for the work that Public Works is doing versus them trying to create more materials for us to be able to review.
Absolutely. Any other questions, comments, concerns, threats on the topics for the upcoming year? Commissioner Lockett.
Will we be formally voting on these in November? What's the next step?
That I am not sure. I don't think that we will take a formal vote to commit ourselves to an agenda 6 months out or anything like that, but I think we'll have a general idea of more informing staff on some of the things that we would like to know leading up to perhaps the next meeting. I'm not exactly sure what the process or procedure would be, since this is going to be the first full year when we're operating on the new meeting cadence. So I'm sure that we could follow up in our November meeting, have 1 month to get those answers.
Yeah, Chair, Commission member, we'll definitely work with legal on whether that would require a motion or we can certainly come back with. And as I view it, next steps would be we would bring, based on the feedback that you all provided today, we'll put together another packet that you can look for ahead of time with additional information, be ready for the discussion. And if I'm hearing the feedback correctly, it sounds like there's interest in all topics, but maybe at this juncture, focusing on the first 2 with a preference to, I guess, defer to staff on what's ready to go. So let staff have some time to kind of think about how we bring those forward, maybe how we stagger them. And then to Commissioner Wertz's point, what we had envisioned was for each meeting, probably having maybe 30 minutes carved out at the top of the meeting where we could have additional topics that are more timely. Maybe there's shorter engagement if something pops up. For instance, some of the baseline on climate metrics, we could have a section dedicated that so that every meeting is not solely focused on the deep dive topics, but that we are dedicating a significant, so maybe that's a hybrid model where we could carve out a smaller chunk of time at the top of every meeting before getting into the deep dive topics. So I think next steps, Commissioner Lockett, to your question, let staff do some thinking about how we bring these topics back forward in a way that makes sense for our readiness and the commissioner's preference and input. And we'll put together a plan and also talk through with legal whether or not that would require a motion or a vote to select topics or not.
Awesome. Thank you. I would throw out just as one thing that has been useful to me in setting meetings in my professional life. We did some quick back of the envelope calculations of based on everybody's time and the cost of the space and the cost of whatever else we need to run the meeting. Every single hour of meeting costs X amount of dollars. And if we're not going to make X amount of equivalent decisions or input or create that much value, then it's probably not worth it running the meeting. So meeting that threshold, I think, is a minimum standard for convening the commission. That I don't know if there are any objections to that. Commissioner Lockett?
Yeah, I think that seems fair. I mean, I think it's hard to quantify, right? Like,
Right.
which you
Yeah,
said,
back of the
that's obvious,
envelope.
right? But would there be any consideration for starting the meetings at 4 o'clock? Like, I'm okay tonight to stay, but like, to your point, like I look around, you guys are fabulous. And the IT guy is somewhere back there and he's working and Daryl's working and it's like, I get that you don't have to do it all the time. And so I appreciate your service, number one, but number two, like if we made it like at 3, is that bad for all of you? I don't know. Have you talked
I
about this
have young
before?
kids and would 1,000% be in favor of starting earlier.
Right? You couldn't come at 4 is what you mean. You need. Oh, I see. Gotcha. So maybe 4:30 is that sweet spot. I just wanted to kind of put it out there.
We can perhaps have a follow-up on, I don't know if that's a set in stone or policy or anything, what time we start, or if that's depending on the time of year, anything like that, if that's something that we can revisit and set meeting by meeting.
Yeah, Chair, Commission members, we can take that as a homework item as just to look at that. And then perhaps it's sending out, preference email to folks so that they can vote on it. But we'll take that as a to-do.
I mean, if we had a big public presence, I would certainly want to wait until the evenings like they do for city council to allow people to be off work and come to meetings. But quite honestly, we don't have a ton of people from the public. So obviously we have to be open and we want to be transparent and I appreciate that it's streamed. But maybe there is flexibility or maybe we do like a noon to 2 meeting. I don't know, but maybe that doesn't work. This works, so I don't want to. Right, I just think we need to think about it too,
Chair,
because of the resources of staff. Thank you.
Chair, Commissioner, appreciate that. Yeah, we'll do some thinking and digging on that.
Awesome. Yeah, and invite your friends to meetings. Is there any other input on the topic selection for this next year? Commissioner Morgan.
I just wanted to express gratitude and thanks for your staff for being really thoughtful and bringing this forward. It's really exciting to do this reset alongside of you. And I'm really grateful that you heard us to be able to do this reset.
Seconded. All right, if there's no other input, then I'll close out our regular agenda. Is there any other business to come before the commission? Commissioner Warrants?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for remembering. I did want to bring one issue to the commission. I don't know the process for, I believe it's through the mayor's office for commissioner appointment. So there's a process that I went through and I'm assuming that would happen with the student position as well. So my question was, is there any anything the commission can do to assist as far as nomination, or is that process, has that train left the station or something like that? Because I think I would be interested anyway in seeing if there are some people that some students that might be interested. So I just want to bring that up forward.
Absolutely. I
Chair.
believe that-
Chair, Commissioners,
Yes,
this is
Kathy.
Kathy. Yes, if I could jump in on that one. The train has not left the station on that. We have not put the advertisement out yet. When I do, then I can send that to all of you so that if you do know somebody or want to encourage someone to apply, you can feel free to forward that as well.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yes.
Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you, Chair Kavat. I'm wondering too, what are the limitations as a student? Is it an age limit or is it a, secondary? What are the limitations of the student possibility?
Chair, Commissioner, I can send you a little bit more information on that, but we do allow high school students or up to college. They just need to be a student. And of course, a Boise resident.
And a full-time student, or what if they're a part-time student? Does that?
That is a nuance I will have to check on for you.
Commissioner
Thanks.
Collette.
Yeah, I can weigh in on that. So I started the commission as a student while I was working full-time and studying part-time and was able to be in the student seat for a year. So I'm assuming part-time students are fine.
Thank you. I would also, and I hope I'm not overstepping, next month is our leadership election meeting for the Public Works Commission. And I would say if you are interested in a leadership post, please let your interest be known to the commission. And we'll pick that up at the next meeting. And if you have any questions about my experience, feel free to reach out to me specifically just about my experience on the commission, and I'm happy to answer just from my personal experience. Yes.
Chair, Commissioner, if I could, before you wrap up, just a genuine thanks to you all for your time. And as Commissioner Morgan mentioned, really excited about the reset. And I know tonight was a lot of talking, but I think this is the orientation, and next month we'll shift really into it'll be a lot more of you all having that dialogue. We're excited to bring the topics back. So just wanted to say thanks for the discussion tonight and bearing with the presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks for building a very solid foundation for us to have a successful year on. All right. Anything else to come before the commission? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Motion from Commissioner Lockett. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second from Commissioner Collette. And all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.